Attention, you're listening to The Todd Huff Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk and education. Be advised, the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. And now, coming to you from the Full Suite Wealth Studios, here is your conservative but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
My friends, as if this story could not get any worse, Austin Metcalf's family has now been hit with death threats as Karmelo Anthony supporters face violence allegations. This is a headline at, where are we here? Fox News? Yeah, foxnews.com. We'll talk about this today. We'll talk about just how society has turned into this absolute mess, my friends. We have a nation that more than anything, certainly we need to accept truth. Certainly we need to learn how to become human in the, at least have a shared humanity again. But more than anything, what this nation needs is a return to the message, the gospel of Jesus Christ. We are it is absolutely devolving into utter chaos and just wickedness and evil, my friends. And that's what I want to talk about here today. Appreciate you tuning in. You are more than free. I welcome you at any time to send me your thoughts and questions to 317-785-1030. You can also email those, todd@toddhuffshow.com. And if you are watching this on social media channels, clips of the program, you are free to put your questions and thoughts below. We encourage that. That also helps this program grow its reach, eventually help us get on more stations, reach more people, of course, through social media and through some of the other things that we're doing here. And we appreciate, my friends, your help in doing that. If you're curious about Kratom, or you're just trying to figure out who you can trust, check out Christopher's Organic Botanicals. They're a family-run company. They offer natural, lab-tested Kratom, not that synthetic garbage that's given Kratom a bad name. Real Kratom is responsibly sourced. It's tested for purity. And that's what Christopher's Organic Botanicals is all about. They work directly with farmers in Indonesia, and they follow the same traditions that have been trusted for generations. There are no gimmicks, shortcuts. My friends, this is just clean, natural Kratom that's an honest alternative for people looking for more than a more natural way to support their health. Start with their Kratom Starter Pack. Coupon code ToddHuff saves you 10%. Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. Again, that's Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. Truth, tradition, transparency. So, again, if you didn't follow us yesterday or Wednesday, this is Friday, by the way. If you didn't join us yesterday or on Wednesday, you may have You missed our discussions about several things, but we spoke primarily about the Karmelo Anthony case. You've undoubtedly heard about this. I don't want to go through all of it again. It's the tragic murder of a 17-year-old by the name of Austin Metcalf in Texas. He was murdered by Karmelo Anthony. A jury of his peers found him guilty. He was sentenced to 35 years in prison. Now, I can give you the facts of the case, which I just did there in a nutshell. Basically, I'll give you a little bit more. Yesterday I had to, our kids are getting old enough, or they are old enough now to where, they see things, they hear things. And so I did yesterday. My son and my wife are traveling out of town, but I was with my two daughters. One is 14, one is 12, and I shared with them, or I started asking them if they had heard anything about this. One of them had, I'm not sure that the other one had or not, but regardless, I wanted to make sure, as a parent, there's a line, right? There's a fine line. You want to protect your children. You want to insulate them from the evils of the world without inhibiting their abilities to become adults. I mean, eventually they're going to have to be fully prepared for what's out there in this cold, dark, wicked world that we find ourselves living in. And so you don't want to shelter them too much forever, but there is certainly a process. You don't tell a toddler all of these terrible things and just throw them directly out into the middle of this chaos and evil. So as they've gotten older, I've tried to find the balance there. And I don't know. I don't know sometimes if I've faltered one way or the other. I'm sure that I have, but it's sometimes unclear. But I also don't want my kids. I think one of the worst things that I see, there's a lot of bad things. Listen, and this is, don't get down in the dumps here, right? There are terrible things that are happening in this country. The world is full of wickedness and evil. I get that that's a lot to carry. But my friends, I still have hope, and there still are examples of things that are good. And of course, for those of us who know Jesus, we know how the story ends. And he's not done with us yet, and it doesn't mean that we can't have a positive impact and improvement in some of these areas. But as I look out there and I see all of this, and we want to prepare our children to be able to deal with this. I asked my daughters had they heard about this, and I told them. They didn't really know the details. Again, as I said, one of them I don't think had heard of it at all. The other one had heard something, but she didn't really know what it meant or didn't really get into it. It might have been a headline or something. So I explained to them that there was two students from opposing teams. My daughters are, they've played sports, so they understand this. And I said there were two teenage boys from different teams. They were running track. It was raining, and one team had a tent set up, and it was, of course, for their school's team. Another kid from the other team came under the tent, and I think immediately one of them looked at me puzzled and say, "Well, that's not his, Dad. What was he doing there?" And I said, "Well, that's kind of what started all of this." And I said he refused to leave. And I said, there was, it got more heated, and eventually a boy came over and basically, they got into an argument about this, and it intensified. There was a shove. The one boy that was trying to tell him to leave, pushed Karmelo Anthony. That, as I understand it, was the testimony. And then in response, I said Karmelo Anthony stabbed him in the chest and killed him. And of course, the girls were in shock. And I said, listen, I don't tell you these things to scare you. I tell you these things so that you understand. You understand first and foremost that if there is a confrontation out there, that these sorts of things can happen. It's not common, but it certainly happens. And of course, they said, why would he stab somebody, Dad, if he shouldn't have been there in the first place? Why didn't he just leave, I think was one of the questions. I said, well, that's kind of the issue here at hand. And then I played him. I said, well, since we're talking about this, let me play you. And I played him Jasmine Crockett, who I played on this program yesterday, her soundbite, basically downplaying this whole thing. By the way, at this point, I still hadn't mentioned the race of either person, because that's not relevant to this situation. So eventually, I played the soundbite from Jasmine Crockett, and I began to explain her comments in the context. And I said, look, the Jasmine Crockett, people in the media, the Democrat Party, the left, the people who want this country racially divided or who view this world solely through the lens of race, I said, they want you to know that the victim was white, and that the person who committed the crime allegedly here, well, from their perspective, he's been convicted, so I don't have to say allegedly any longer. But they say that this kid, this young man, right, this young boy, now they want to go to his him being a kid and so forth, and really make this sound like he was a scared young boy when he was confronted, that he was targeted because he was black. There was a jury that didn't have any black people on it. By the way, it's not an all-white jury. That's what's being reported out there in some places. It is not an all-white jury. There was multiple people who were white, but there were also members of that jury who were Asian, and members of that jury who were Hispanic as well. But regardless, this turned into this racial thing, and now we have death threats to to Austin Metcalf's family. That's the victim's family. I also played them a soundbite. I think I played it on here yesterday, where there was a woman. She was a black woman. She said she had 5 black children, and she said, I don't know what I'm supposed to tell them to do anymore. I don't know what I'm supposed to tell them to do. And so I asked the girls. We were driving back from someplace they had been, and I said, can you think, based upon the story I told you, can you think of some examples of things that Karmelo could have done instead of stabbing Austin Metcalf in the chest and killing him? Also, by the way, whenever Jasmine Crockett made the comment that he only stabbed him once in the chest, my oldest daughter had a look of incredulity on her face, as though she could not believe the insanity she was listening to. What do you mean she only stabbed him once? Dad, it killed him. What does that have to do with anything? He stabbed him in the heart, Dad? Yeah. Apparently that's not a bad enough thing for Jasmine Crockett. She's out there, she's trying to avoid using the word stabbing. She's referring to what Karmelo used as a tool. She doesn't want to say knife. It's preposterous where we've gotten. You add the racial component to this, the racial tensions, the race baiters here, and you get a tremendous amount of volatility. Now we've got, as I mentioned here, Austin Metcalf's family now receiving death threats. Jacksonville police say they are actively looking into one video showing an alleged attack. So I'm going to read a bit of this article here at foxnews.com. Supporters of Karmelo Anthony are now allegedly turning to violence following his murder conviction, while family members of Austin Metcalf, the teen who Anthony stabbed and killed, murdered, according to the criminal case, where he's now been convicted of that. The family members of Austin Metcalf, again, the victim's family, have been receiving death threats following the verdict. Does that even make sense? The family of the victim. Just pause everything for a moment. What type of person, what type of human being gives a death threat to a family who lost a year ago a 17-year-old son? What type of loser, what type of evil person is doing this? What did they have to do with anything? Well, Todd, they raised Mr. Metcalf. They raised Austin. And Austin's the one that caused this, not according to a jury of his peers. No self-defense. The jury didn't... Listen, the jury was prepared. The judge in this case, from what I can gather, has done a great job in making sure that this doesn't end in a mistrial. And the jury, he did many things to protect the jury and to limit the chaos that he knew was coming from this case. But, in addition to that, one of the things that they were prepared to do, they were prepared to be sequestered, and they had to leave their cell phones if they were to deliberate and have to stay overnight. They did not deliberate and have to stay overnight. They deliberated relatively, a short time. It wasn't days and that sort of thing. And they convicted him. And so in what deranged way of thinking does one call up or text, as some of these people are doing, texting the family of the victim to threaten to kill them? In what universe does that make any sense whatsoever? Why is the family to blame? See, you reach a point, my friends. You reach a point when you refuse to accept truth for so long, when your heart is intentionally set upon evil, continually looking at that, and you refuse to listen to those things that are good, to those things that are coming from God, and you eventually reach a place of complete depravity. Your mind is depraved. It is looking upon wickedness. It is just evil, vindictive. It's angry at the world. It teaches you to see yourself as the victim. It teaches you to look at the people, in some cases, who have no fault in a situation and to blame them and then to threaten to kill them. This is not normal. This is not good. This is something that comes straight from the pits of hell itself. My friends, the article says, Anthony and Metcalf, they were both 17 when Anthony fatally stabbed Metcalf at a high school track meet in August of last year. Anthony was convicted, I mentioned this, of murder and sentenced to 35 years behind bars on Tuesday. He has since filed a notice of appeal to challenge the conviction. Reports have circulated of Anthony supporters threatening violence. In one recent video posted on X, apparently by a user from Jacksonville, Florida, someone riding a bike appeared to assault a man. The video was taken from the rider's vantage point. The alleged attacker questioned the victim, asking if he was on the Anthony trial jury selection. In that video, a woman's voice can be heard stating the man who was allegedly punched is a veteran. In a statement to Fox News Digital regarding the alleged incident, the Jacksonville Police Department said, "We are aware of this video circulating on social media and are actively looking into the video's origin and parties involved." While threats continues, it appears yet another fundraiser for Anthony was circulating online. I've got news about that as well. So, lots of stuff going on here. Let me find there's one other article I want. Here we go. This is at the nationalpulse.com. Austin Metcalf's family receives death threats after sentencing of murderer Karmelo Anthony. The family of white teenager Austin Metcalf has reportedly received numerous death threats and violent messages after the conviction of his black murderer Karmelo Anthony. So they're texting the family, threatening to kill them, harm them. It's just messages of violence. The family of Austin Metcalf has reportedly been inundated with death threats and violent messages following Anthony's conviction for first-degree murder earlier this week. Sources connected to the case said that threats against the Metcalf family, who are white, intensified after Anthony, who is black, was found guilty and sentenced to 35 years in prison for first-degree murder. Notably, he will be eligible for parole after only 17 years. By the way, we should mention that Anthony took the entire remaining life away from his victim, Austin Metcalf. That's my commentary, not here in the article. Messages reportedly sent to the family included taunts about Austin's death. So they're taunting them because of race. Because of race, my friends. This is wicked and this is evil. And the people who have stirred this up, need to be removed from political power. These people should not be trusted. These people, not all of them, of course, are politicians, but they should not be taken seriously. They are a danger and a threat to law and order, to justice here in the United States of America. So there's taunts about Austin's death. That's what the text message is. So they've gotten the phone number somehow. They're texting the family. They're taunting them about the death of their 17-year-old son. Threats against his twin brother Hunter, those are also being texted to the family. And claims that Austin's grave would be vandalized. So not only do they want to mock the death and taunt the family over the death of their 17-year-old son, not only do they want to threaten to kill the twin brother of the young man who was murdered by Karmelo Anthony, they also want to vandalize and desecrate the grave of their son, Austin. Folks, if this is the side of this argument that you are on, and this is something that is always perplexed me. If you are on the side, let's say you think that this Karmelo Anthony, this young man, was not given a fair trial because he was black. I would say provide some evidence to that besides your feelings and your projection, apparently, for how you treat and think about other people. But I would also say, for those who are fair-minded in that situation, if there are such people out there, excuse me, I would also say, if that's the case, then surely you can condemn this. This should be unacceptable no matter what you think happened in the original case. You ought to be able to say that this is pure wickedness and evil and that it should have to stop. And I'm struggling here with clearing my throat. So, fortunately, we're at the end of the segment. And I can wrap up here and get a drink during, my friends, the break. So, you've worked hard for your money. You've made smart choices. And now it's about making sure that effort counts, not just today, but for the future as well. Full Suite Wealth helps forward-thinking people with a coordinated approach to wealth, legacy, and legal planning, including private equity, private credit, and options strategies. They'll help you see the big picture, plan ahead, and make your success truly matter for the people you care about most. The goal is a plan that stands the test of time. Visit FullSuiteWealth.com for more information. Jason and his team will take great care of you. FullSuiteWealth.com. That's FullSuiteWealth.com. Build your legacy, secure your future. Time out for me, my friends, and I'm going to get that drink. Be back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. So I didn't mention this last segment. I ran out of time. I did get that drink as well, my friends. I feel better here coming into this second segment, so fear not. We will get through this just fine. So one of the text messages that was sent by people who are mocking and threatening and celebrating the murder of Austin Metcalf, sending these messages to his family, reportedly. One of them said, quote, "I have to edit this." I mean, that shouldn't surprise you. The people who are sending these messages, of course, will be vulgar. If you want to just get a glimpse of, well, just look at conservative posts on social media and look at the comments, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. This is how the left, the godless, unhinged, infuriated, enraged, radical left behaves. Texted the family who has been mourning the death of the murder of their son, Austin Metcalf. They get one text. This is one example. This is the text. He effed around and found out. That's a message that was sent to the Metcalf family. The threats, this article says at thenationalpulse.com, against the Metcalf family highlight the ongoing vengeance-seeking of many of Anthony's primarily black supporters, some of whom clashed violently with others outside the court where he was sentenced earlier this week. Listen, it's pretty cut and dry for me. A jury of his peers heard the evidence in this case. We've gotten summaries of what that evidence is. We've talked about that on here. I asked my girls, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier when I was explaining this case and trying to talk them through this and just prepare them for stepping out into this cold, dark world. I said, one of the parents who I alluded to earlier, who was in a video saying, what is she supposed to tell her 5 black children, her 5 black sons to do? And I asked my girls, I said, what do you think would have been a better choice than stabbing Austin Metcalf in the chest? Of course, the girls were asking questions. Why did he have a knife at a track meet? Why didn't he just walk away? Why didn't he go to his own tent? Why did he escalate like this? Why did he have to stab him in the chest? None of this makes sense. We can think of lots of other things that he could have done, lots of other choices he could have made prior, other than stabbing him in the chest. And that's the bottom line, right? That's the bottom line. It's not self-defense. We've established that the jury, or at least the prosecution, tore that argument down. It was clear to the jury. They didn't deliberate very long. This was an act of aggression. He grabbed his knife and he stabbed him in the chest. And now we have people that are out there defending it. And now we have people out there saying, if you think that this young man is guilty, if you're not going to stand in solidarity with the people out there protesting this and that are angry about this, that you are somehow a racist. This is completely out of control. This is completely out of control. Of course, there are examples of racism. Of course, historically, this nation had some terrible things. It did awful things, completely and absolutely horrific, as it pertains to race and the founding of this nation. We have since fixed the systemic problems here. Those problems do not exist. And by the way, I didn't create those problems, and neither did a lot of other people that are blamed in this situation. We did not create these problems. We weren't even here to create these problems. I recognize them, and I'm glad that they have been fixed. And listen, just to go around and to make demands on people to ignore justice, to ignore what needs to be done for the person who took the life of young Austin Metcalf. I mean, this is not something that and many people are just going to shrug our shoulders and say, what do you do? No, what has to be done is that we have to stand up to this stuff. We can't give in to this. The people who are making death threats need to be investigated, need to be identified if possible, and they need to be prosecuted in accordance with the law. By the way, the people who want to throw every person who was at the Capitol building in prison for life on January 6, 2021, even though there were many different types of people who did many different things on January 6th, would you join me? You constantly ask me. I imagine in 50 years from now, if I'm still doing this program, that would be pretty old. But who knows? If I'm still doing this program, let's say 30 years from now, and I comment on something happening in society at the moment and how terrible it is and how everyone should agree that it's terrible, I'll probably get a message on the whatever technology we have at that time, the hologram in my head or something, some message that'll say, what about January 6th? Which I've said that consistently the whole time. If you've broken the law on January 6th, you need to be held accountable for breaking that law. You also need to be given due process. By the way, Karmelo Anthony needs to be given due process, and I would argue that he has been. This is consistent. This is how reasonable, rational adults think and behave and make decisions that aren't emotionally driven. And I'll tell you something else. It's almost like there's a group of people who have been stirred up into absolute rage, and they are looking for reasons to inflict violence and threats upon upon people who are not joining their cause, upon people who aren't the same race as them, which, by the way, would be racism as well, my friends. It's about time that we stop denying this fact and accept it for what it is. If you hate people because they're white, if you think that white people need to be eradicated, as some of these lunatics do, that is racism. And not saying it is racism only allows that movement to gain traction. That is absolutely evil and wicked to say that about any group of people. Instead, these clowns will say, yeah, but. Yeah, you shouldn't think these things, but the white person, this, that, and the other. Listen, there's some terrible white people. I grant you that. There are terrible people in each and every race. It's not the race. And by the way, we're human, right? I hate even talking in terms of the color of our skin. We have a lot more in our shared humanity. We all are created in the image of God. Every one of us, regardless of the color of our skin, our ethnicity, what we look like, where we grew up, all these things, we are all created in the image of Almighty God. We are brothers and sisters in that sense, descendants, if you will, of Adam and Eve. So this is crazy to me that it's gotten to this point. But there are people who fuel this animosity and hatred and rage, and some people are just looking for a reason to take the rage that is already in their heart and turn it into violence externally, justifiably, well, in their minds, justifiably so. It reminds me what I saw. Listen, if the New York Knicks, win the NBA Finals, the NBA title here, I don't know what these idiots are going to do to the city of New York. Have you already seen? There's videos. There's videos of them already going into, I think it was a Five Guys burger. Young people with cameras. They stormed the restaurant after the Knicks won Game 4, coming back from a 29. I don't want to talk about it because I'm rooting for the San Antonio Spurs. Very, very hard here. It's hard to be a Pacers fan and a Knicks fan, I'll tell you that. Hicks versus Knicks. I'm for the Hicks every time, by the way. But regardless, the Knicks fans, and it's not all of them, right? But the city's so big that there's a lot of them that they stormed this Five Guys burger. They start just throwing things, breaking things, jumping behind the counter, damaging the store, and then they run out. I don't know if they stole. I don't know what all happened. You see the video clip and it's chaos, but it was violent. It was violent. And some of these people are looking for an excuse to be violent. They're blaming the wrong people for their problems. The problems are much deeper. The problems, my friends, are spiritual, and that's what I want to talk about on the other side of this break. But I got to take this break, my friends. You know, one of the biggest challenges we have as conservatives is finding ways to ensure our values align with the way that we live our life. That includes how we invest our money. That's why I love what the team at 4-8 Financial is doing. They specialize in biblically responsible investing. That means they screen out companies that do not align with your faith and your values so that you're not funding things that go completely against what you believe in, funding things that are, in turn, funding some of these radical and godless movements. They do the heavy lifting for you. All you have to do is take a quick and easy assessment. They will then take the findings of that assessment to determine what degree your investments are aligned with your purpose and goals. The best part is you can do that right now. Head on over to 48financial.com/Todd. That's 48financial.com/Todd. 48 Financial, because your money should work for your values and certainly not against them, my friends. Time out for me. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. There is a solution. There is a solution to the anger and the rage that is out there today. And it's not, listen, there's a time, don't misunderstand me if you're in the mental health profession. I'm not trying to, say that there's never a time for this. But the answer is not going to mental health experts. The answer is not sitting down with a counselor to talk about your feelings and all of that. The answer for these things, my friends, is to turn the heart from sin and to repent and to seek the forgiveness of Jesus Christ. Here's the thing that I think a lot of people go through life never realizing. Life is not about just trying to get as much as you can on this trip around this universe over the many years on this globe. That's not what life is about. Life is about being reconciled with our Creator. And as I've said before, it makes no difference. Listen, I have strong political opinions. I'm a conservative. I believe in the Constitution, limited government. I believe that the ideas of the Democrat Party, I believe that the weakness of the rhino Republicans, I believe that the radical left, of course, is unhinged and pure wickedness, what they're teaching and proclaiming. But I think there's bad ideas across the spectrum. They need to be stopped. We need to win politically. But hear me say this. I don't care where you fall on that spectrum. Be far right, far. I do care. I hope to help you move to the right. Contents have, or I should say research has proven, scientists have spoken, 97% of scientists say that listening to this program will cause you to lean to the right. I mean, this is science. You can't argue with that. And that's what I want to do. But more than that, what I want to do, those things are important, but not more important than this. The most important thing is to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. We have a lost and dying nation. This nation at one point in her time, in her history, never, of course, was sinless, but this nation at one point in her history had people who were seeking Jesus, who were seeking to be made in his image. There were always people who didn't want to, but the opposition that they had and the amount of hatred they had towards that which was good, which came from God and his ways and his word, the amount of hatred for that has grown exponentially in recent years. I've shared with you before, I wasn't raised in a Christian home. My family now attends church with us. I had the privilege of baptizing my father several years ago. But I wasn't raised in a Christian home. I would say that my family taught me values that were consistent with the Bible. And the Bible was always respected and revered, but we weren't taught that. We didn't go to church. It wasn't until I went to a Fellowship of Christian Athletes football camp in 1993 as a soon-to-be sophomore, entering my sophomore year, that I heard the gospel for the first time and I received the message. I responded to the message. I did nothing to earn it, and neither did you. There is nothing. And listen, these things that we've talked about on this program are evil and wicked and bad. But none of these things preclude someone from becoming a follower of Jesus. There's examples. The Apostle Paul, before he became the Apostle Paul, when he was walking around and when he was Saul killing Christians, that did not prevent him from being a follower of Jesus. He had to repent. He had an encounter with Jesus. He turned from his ways. But Jesus, God forgives us our sins. That's the point. We can't earn it. There's nothing that can be done. We also cannot fill our heart's desire to be in communion with our Creator. You know, when God created this universe, He programmed us this way. You can kick and scream and argue and deny that it's true for you, but it is. It is true. God created you, created me, created humanity, regardless of all these other factors, race, gender, ethnicity, all these things. He created all of us to live in union with Him. When God made Adam and Eve, the Bible says that He would walk with them in the coolness of the evening and just commune with His people. And that's what God longs for. But see, humanity tries to fill that need to be with God, sometimes out of ignorance, but a lot of times out of selfishness and all these other things. We try to fill that hole with other things, other items, other material things. And listen, I'm not saying that you can't have goals or dreams and those sorts of things, even an ambition to a point. It certainly, there's lines for all of these things that we shouldn't be crossing. But there's nothing wrong with liking certain things and trying to provide for your family. I think that's noble, taking care of your family. But what happens is the Bible says what causes fights and quarrels among you is not your selfish desires. And so you have a group of people who are told they should have a bunch of things, and they don't have certain things. And again, I'm not just talking here about Karmelo Anthony. These are stories that just bring this out for me. That's why I brought up the New York Knicks as well. This is not tied to race or anything like that. It's tied to a mindset that says someone else is preventing you from living and achieving these things in life. And people will get so angry and enraged when what they should be doing is falling upon their knees at the foot of the cross for Jesus. Folks, I got to run. Thanks for listening. SDG.